Hey, I'm Shane from Shane's Law. I'm here today with Alex, one of the attorneys here, and we want to talk about one of his recent client victories. And this case in particular is interesting because there were a couple issues that made it harder than a normal case. But Alex, tell us about TS's case. How did the accident occur?
So TS, she just was driving straight. The adverse driver ran a stop sign and T-boned her.
Okay, that's, I've said it before and I'll say it again, that's sort of like everybody's nightmare, right? You go through, you know, the other side's got a stop sign, and my wife gets mad at me because I always want to, I don't want to stop, but I slow down and look if it looks like they're not going to stop. And in this particular case, they didn't, huh?
Yeah, absolutely not. And in fact, Miss TS, she was traveling at about 55 miles an hour. And this adverse driver just pulled out, didn't stop at all, hit her at 25 as well.
Wow. From the side or right in the front?
From the side.
So it's, all right, so it's one of those side impact collisions, which we know generally are, I'll say, more traumatic and severe because they're more likely to knock the car over. You also, cars just aren't designed to take that much hit. I mean, there's not a lot of space between you, the door, and the other vehicle. So how did TS feel after the accident?
So actually, she was unconscious at the scene of the crash, and she was transported via EMS to the hospital.
Okay, so I would assume when that car hit, she got jostled, probably her head hit one side of the car, knocked her out.
Yep.
They took her to the hospital?
Yep, she hit her head on the window. She got knocked out. She was transported by way of EMS to the hospital, and only after they kind of punched her in the chest did she actually wake up.
Wow, so life-threatening injuries these certainly were.
Yes.
What did they find her injuries out to be?
She had an intracranial brain contusion.
That sounds awful.
Yeah, and then to make matters worse, she also had a fractured vertebrae, and she had multiple broken ribs.
So that's, yeah, so that sounds absolutely awful. So a brain bruise, cracked spine, and then multiple broken ribs. And anybody who's had broken ribs is very, very painful. Did she stay in the hospital, or did they keep her there or release her right away?
So she was in the hospital for 4 nights.
Wow, okay. So that again shows the severity of the impact. And what did we do for her after then?
So she actually remained in contact with us for just a couple days, and then she just went MIA for about a year.
And I know you and I have talked, she had some personal issues that came up that made it difficult for her to get in touch with us and difficult for her to get any treatment. What were we able to do with this case since you only had a limited amount of medical care, basically?
So what I did was I looked at all the records and I sent the records to the adjuster, and then also I just did a bunch of research into how each of these injuries would affect Miss TS in the future. And then I presented all of those objectively to the adjuster. Didn't have anything subjective to go off of, so I had to do what I could, and I just said objectively, here's a lot of situations, and here are the outcomes of what have happened.
And this is what we know the result of this is because of literature, research, things like that.
Yes, exactly.
Even something as simple as, broken ribs. We know what the symptoms are of broken ribs. It's painful every time you move. You can't breathe. You can't do all these things. It increases the chance of pneumonia, all these things. Same for each of these injuries. You presented that to the insurance company. What did they say?
They said, hey, we're going to give you an offer of actually $90,000. And I said, absolutely no way.
Okay. So 90 grand seems like a lot. What were you able to turn that into?
I was able to turn that into $140,000.
Okay.
Which is a substantial turnaround.
Yeah, so that's an increase by about 50% from their initial offer.
Yeah, roughly.
And when you look at the fact that the medical care was very limited on this case after the fact, and it was difficult for us to talk about the impact that all the injuries had on her, that sounds like a substantial victory.
Yeah, it was a substantial victory, and she was ecstatic when we were able to get back into contact with her. Health insurance only really paid about $15,000 on that, so she walked away with a lot of money, and it was life-changing. She's a single mom.
Great result for the situation. Obviously, the situation was bad, but great result for the situation. You said she was ecstatic when you told her?
Yeah, she was absolutely ecstatic. She's going to go use that to go help her improve her kid's life and get her out of her bad situation.
It sounds like she was super lucky to have you as her attorney. It sounds like you did some extra work above and beyond what a lot of people would have done to try to turn what was a less than ideal situation, the best result you could for the client. And it sounds like a great result for her.
Yeah. I would say in the future, please make sure you remain in contact with whoever your attorney may be.
For all of our listeners out there, hit like and subscribe down below for more client victories from Shane Smith Law. And remember, if you're in pain, call Shane, 980-999-9999.
In pain, so I call Shane, 980-999-9999. In pain, call Shane.